We say we love animals. We build shelters for them, write laws to protect them, and post their faces with hearts and hashtags. But behind every image of affection lies a truth we rarely confront. Compassion has a cost. Each time we rescue one creature, feed another, or shelter a few from the storm, somewhere else, millions live and die unseen. We comfort ourselves with the idea that our kindness is enough. But what if loving animals is not the same as understanding their welfare? What if our compassion has blind spots shaped by convenience, tradition, and the limits of our empathy? From the family dog to the laboratory mouse, from the elephant in a sanctuary to the chicken in a cage, the question isn't whether we care. It's how far that care really goes. Animal welfare isn't a single act of mercy. It's a philosophy, a science, and a mirror that reflects who we are as moral beings. This documentary will take you beyond the surface of sympathy. We'll journey through history, science, and ethics, uncovering how welfare became a global movement and how it continues to evolve in a world that demands both compassion and consumption. Stay until the end, because by then, you might see every act of kindness differently, not as a feel-good gesture, but as a complex equation of empathy, necessity, and survival. This isn't just a story about animals. It's a story about us and the invisible cost of calling ourselves humane. Empathy, the heartbeat of compassion, didn't begin in philosophy or religion. It began in the wild. Long before humans could speak, empathy was already written in the code of survival. A mother elephant mourns her calf. A wolf brings food back to an injured packmate. Even rats, when given the choice between freeing a trapped companion or eating chocolate, often choose freedom first. These acts aren't charity. They're evolution's way of keeping life connected. Some scientists call empathy an emotional contagion, the ability to feel what others feel, not through logic, but through mirror neurons that echo pain, fear, and joy. It's the biological bridge between me and you. For humans, that bridge became longer and stronger, stretching beyond our species. We look into an animal's eyes and see something familiar: vulnerability, curiosity, emotion. That recognition triggers something ancient within us. But empathy is not infinite. It's selective. Our minds evolved to prioritize what looks, sounds, or behaves like us. That's why a puppy's whimper moves us, but a fish gasping on a deck often doesn't. Our compassion, though powerful, is filtered through appearance and proximity. We care most for what mirrors our own reflection. And this is where the moral tension begins. Because empathy alone can mislead us, making us cherish one life while ignoring another. True animal welfare demands something deeper, not just feeling, but understanding. Not just reacting, but recognizing that every heartbeat, no matter how different, carries a story of its own. In the next scene, we'll step back in time to see how this emotion, born from instinct, evolved into one of humanity's greatest moral revolutions: the birth of animal welfare. The idea of animal welfare may feel modern, a product of social media empathy and viral outrage, but its roots reach deep into history, born from the uneasy conscience of human progress. For centuries, animals were seen as tools, engines of labor, sources of food, symbols of power. The horse that plowed a field, the ox that turned a mill, the dog that guarded the gate. Each lived a life of use, not of rights. Yet even in those early ages, a quiet question began to stir. Did they feel? In 1822, that question turned into law. The British Parliament passed Martin's Act, the world's first legislation against animal cruelty. It was a small, radical step aimed at stopping the brutal beating of cattle in public markets. Soon after came the founding of the RSPCA, the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, marking the birth of a global movement. What began as moral outrage would evolve into science, policy, and education. But these early reforms weren't just about kindness. They were about redefining civilization itself. Philosophers like Jeremy Bentham argued that the real question wasn't whether animals could reason, but whether they could suffer. That single word changed everything. Suffering became the moral compass of compassion. Yet progress came slowly. For every reform, there were countless silent cries behind barn doors and laboratory walls. The concept of welfare emerged as a compromise, a way to ease guilt without dismantling dependence. It sought to make animal use more humane, not to end it. And that's where the modern paradox was born, a balance between care and control, empathy and exploitation. In the next scene, we'll see how this balance took shape, distilled into 5 principles that would define animal care for generations to come. The 5 freedoms. In 1965, a quiet revolution took shape in a government report from the United Kingdom. It began with a simple question: what does a good life mean for an animal under human care? The answer would echo through farms, zoos, and laboratories around the world, crystallized into 5 principles known today as the 5 freedoms. Freedom from hunger and thirst. Freedom from discomfort. Freedom from pain, injury, and disease. Freedom to express normal behavior. And freedom from fear and distress. At first glance, they sound humane, even obvious. But beneath their simplicity lies a profound moral shift. These freedoms didn't just describe survival, they defined dignity. They challenged us to see animals not as objects of production, but as sentient beings with needs, emotions, and preferences. Over time, these 5 freedoms became the backbone of global welfare policies. Farms restructured their housing systems, zoos redesigned enclosures, and labs adopted enrichment programs. Yet the freedoms also revealed a contradiction. They were written for animals who will never be free. They exist within human systems, cages, pens, tanks, environments that can only approximate nature. To grant freedom within captivity is to walk a moral tightrope. How do you give choice to those who live under control? The 5 freedoms didn't end the debate, they only began it. They offered a moral compass, but not a destination. True welfare, as we'll see, requires more than avoiding suffering. It demands that we understand what fulfillment means for another species. In the next scene, we'll step into this tension, the divide between welfare and rights, between reforming systems and reimagining them entirely. At first, the words welfare and rights might sound interchangeable, 2 paths toward the same goal, kindness to animals. But in truth, they stand on opposite sides of a moral fault line. Animal welfare asks, how can we use animals more humanely? Animal rights asks, should we use them at all? Welfare accepts the relationship between humans and animals as a given. It seeks to reduce suffering, to ensure that the chicken in a cage can stand, the lab rat feels less pain, the zoo lion has space to roam. It's a philosophy of improvement within control. Rights, however, questions the very foundation of that control. It sees animals not as property, but as individuals, beings with inherent value beyond their utility. It challenges the idea that comfort can justify captivity. This divide has fueled decades of debate, sometimes even within the same movement. Scientists and farmers defend welfare as practical, measurable, evidence-based, adaptable. Philosophers and activists argue that no amount of comfort can justify exploitation. A bigger cage, they say, is still a cage. And yet, both sides share a painful truth. Neither can fully exist without the other. Welfare without ethics becomes empty policy. Rights without science becomes unanchored idealism. Between them lies the real work, a messy, imperfect space where compassion meets reality. Every time we buy a carton of eggs, visit a zoo, or adopt a pet, we stand in that moral gap. The question isn't just what we believe, it's what we're willing to tolerate. In the next scene, we'll look deeper into that paradox. How our compassion for animals can coexist with the systems that depend on their suffering. We love animals, but selectively. We cradle our dogs, name our cats, mourn their passing. Yet we eat pigs, wear cows, and test on mice. The same hand that pets can also harm. This is the compassion paradox, the emotional dissonance between how we feel about animals and how we treat them. Modern society is built upon invisible hierarchies of worth. A horse is noble, a dolphin intelligent, a chicken just food. We rank them unconsciously, guided not by science, but by culture, tradition, and proximity. What's sacred in one nation is supper in another. Psychologists call this moral distancing. It helps us live with contradictions. We love the idea of kindness, but not always the cost of practicing it. And so, we divide animals into categories that justify our choices: companion, livestock, pest, tool. Each label determines not only their fate, but the level of empathy we allow ourselves to feel. The paradox deepens in media. Cute animals dominate screens, their faces humanized for sympathy, while billions of unseen creatures live and die in the shadows of efficiency. The closer we feel to an animal, the more we value its life. The rest remain invisible. This moral filtering isn't new. It's ancient, rooted in survival and culture. But in a world where science tells us animals think, feel, and even dream, the old excuses begin to crumble. If a pig can solve puzzles like a dog, if a crow can plan for tomorrow, where do we draw the moral line? Our compassion is powerful, but inconsistent. We cry over a stranded whale, then dine on tuna the next night. It's not hypocrisy. It's humanity struggling to reconcile empathy with appetite. In the next scene, we'll journey into the heart of this conflict, the industries that profit from our selective compassion, and how they've learned to use welfare as a shield for exploitation. Animal welfare has become a brand. Free range, cage-free, grass-fed, humane certified. Words designed to soothe our conscience more than they change the lives of animals. Behind every gentle label lies a carefully crafted illusion, born from the union of ethics and marketing. We want to believe that suffering can be sanitized, that cruelty can be managed by policy, packaged by industry, and sold back to us as compassion. Step inside a modern humane farm. There's no blood, no screaming, just silence, stainless steel, and efficiency. The spaces are bigger, the air cleaner, the deaths quicker. Yet the fundamental truth remains. These animals still die for convenience, not necessity. The term welfare becomes a linguistic mask, a way to make exploitation look responsible. Corporations have learned to profit from empathy. Surveys show that most consumers will pay more for ethical meat or dairy, even when the difference is only in perception. As long as there's a comforting image, a smiling cow, a sunny field, a farmer in overalls, we buy the story. Because the story hurts less than the truth. Governments join the narrative, introducing welfare standards that sound progressive but often serve industry interests. The result is a moral paradox turned into policy, suffering rebranded as sustainability. Happy eggs, content cows, stress-free slaughter. Language becomes the anesthetic that dulls our collective guilt. But this is not an accusation. It's a reflection of how deeply our need for ethical coherence runs. We crave comfort, not conflict. We want to care, but not to change. And so the welfare industry thrives not on cruelty, but on compromise. In the next scene, we'll strip away the labels and follow the welfare system from farm to factory, uncovering how compassion has been mechanized and where, beneath the machinery, real suffering still hides. The phrase welfare approved suggests safety, comfort, and dignity, but step behind the label and the image dissolves. Free-range chickens may still live in crowded sheds, packed by the thousands, their access to the outdoors reduced to a small door at the far end of the building. Cage-free doesn't mean freedom, only the absence of wire. The walls are different, but the system is the same, engineered to maximize output while maintaining the illusion of care. In modern humane farms, welfare is measured not in lives lived, but in numbers met. Temperature, feed, light, all optimized to keep animals productive for as long as possible. Suffering, in this framework, is a management issue, not a moral one. And yet, beneath the protocols and polished certifications, animals still endure pain, confinement, and fear. Only now, it's hidden under the language of progress. Investigators have filmed welfare-certified facilities where pigs scream during transport, where cows collapse from exhaustion, and where fish are slaughtered while still conscious. The footage rarely reaches the public because the marketing is louder than the truth. We've built a system where comfort is measured by human perception, not animal experience. And that's the great tragedy. Welfare was meant to protect animals, but somewhere along the way, it became a tool to protect human emotions instead. The labels aren't lies, they're partial truths, carefully crafted to keep compassion at a distance. They allow us to feel moral without confronting the uncomfortable. But real welfare, true welfare, isn't about better cages or softer deaths. It's about acknowledging that animals have intrinsic value beyond their utility. That their lives, like ours, matter not because they serve us, but because they exist. In the next scene, we'll look deeper into how the science of welfare tries to measure suffering, and how even with data, empathy remains the hardest metric of all. How do you measure pain in beings that can't describe it? For centuries, humans assumed silence meant absence. Animals couldn't speak, so their suffering was seen as primitive, mechanical, a twitch, not a cry. But modern science has shattered that illusion. From brain imaging to behavior tracking, researchers now study pain not as an instinct, but as an experience, one that animals share with us in ways more profound than we once dared to admit. Neuroscientists have identified pain pathways, nociceptors, in mammals, birds, fish, and even some invertebrates. When an animal is injured, their brain lights up in patterns strikingly similar to our own. They don't just react, they anticipate, avoid, and even remember pain. A crab can learn to avoid an electric shock. A pig can vocalize distress uniquely tied to emotional fear. Fish exhibit anxiety after being harmed, altering their behavior for days. These are not reflexes, they are experiences. Yet, the science of suffering is not black and white. Welfare researchers must navigate between data and empathy. They use indicators, cortisol levels, posture, vocalization to infer well-being. But can numbers ever truly capture fear, loneliness, or grief? When a mother cow bellows for her calf after separation, what formula measures that ache? When elephants caress the bones of their dead, how do we quantify respect or love? In laboratories around the world, scientists are trying to build an ethical map of emotion, translating pain into data, distress into metrics. Their goal is noble: to make suffering visible to policy, to give emotion a language that law can understand. But each discovery also deepens the moral question. If animals feel so much like us, then what justifies the suffering we still allow? In the next scene, we'll explore how this science reshapes our understanding of welfare, and how the answers might challenge the very systems built to protect them. The deeper science peers into the minds of animals, the harder it becomes to separate knowledge from conscience. Every new study revealing emotional complexity or cognitive depth forces a reckoning. Once we know they can feel, what excuses remain for the suffering we cause? Data becomes more than information. It becomes a mirror. And what it reflects is uncomfortable. When neuroscientists mapped the emotional centers of the animal brain, they found analogs to our own, structures for fear. Neuroscientists have identified pain pathways, nociceptors, in mammals, birds, fish, and even some invertebrates. When an animal is injured, their brain lights up in patterns strikingly similar to our own. They don't just react, they anticipate, avoid, and even remember pain. A crab can learn to avoid an electric shock. A pig can vocalize distress uniquely tied to emotional fear. Fish exhibit anxiety after being harmed, altering their behavior for days. These are not reflexes, they are experiences. Yet, the science of suffering is not black and white. Welfare researchers must navigate between data and empathy. They use indicators, cortisol levels, posture, vocalization to infer well-being. But can numbers ever truly capture fear, loneliness, or grief? When a mother cow bellows for her calf after separation, what formula measures that ache? When elephants caress the bones of their dead, how do we quantify respect or love? In laboratories around the world, scientists are trying to build an ethical map of emotion, translating pain into data, distress into metrics. Their goal is noble: to make suffering visible to policy, to give emotion a language that law can understand. But each discovery also deepens the moral question. If animals feel so much like us, then what justifies the suffering we still allow? In the next scene, we'll explore how this science reshapes our understanding of welfare, and how the answers might challenge the very systems built to protect them.
Inside research labs, the word welfare takes on a complicated shape, one suspended between human need and animal vulnerability. Millions of animals are used in scientific studies each year, from mice and fish to primates, and their lives exist in a space where suffering and progress constantly collide. Researchers who work with them often describe an emotional tension, the desire to save human lives while knowing that those lives come with a hidden cost. This is where the 3 rupees emerged: replace, reduce, refine, guiding scientists to seek alternatives whenever possible, to minimize the number of animals used, and to improve conditions for those who remain. Yet even with these principles, the dilemma persists. A mouse in a clean, temperature-controlled facility may still feel fear, pain, or stress, while a scientist may carry the quiet burden of knowing their work requires sacrifice. In this scene, we explore the uncomfortable truth that animal welfare in labs is not a simple story of cruelty or compassion, but a difficult balancing act between ethics and necessity, shaped by the choices society makes every day. We adore our pets, often treating them like members of the family, celebrating their birthdays, buying special food, and filling our homes with their toys. Yet beneath this affection lies a paradox we rarely confront. Many of the traits we find cute were created through selective breeding that silently harms the very animals we love. Breeds like pugs, bulldogs, and Persian cats struggle with breathing issues, eye problems, and chronic pain because their exaggerated features were shaped to satisfy human preference rather than animal well-being. Even trendy, designer mixes can inherit vulnerabilities from multiple lineages, creating lives filled with hidden discomfort behind their adorable faces. This isn't the fault of pet owners who genuinely care, but the result of decades of breeding driven by demand, aesthetics, and profit. The pet paradox forces us to ask a difficult question: if compassion defines our bond with companions, why do we celebrate traits that compromise their health? True animal welfare begins when love is paired with knowledge, when we choose not what looks cutest, but what allows our animals to live comfortably, breathe freely, and simply be themselves. Zoos and aquariums promise a world where humans can meet animals they might never see in the wild, but behind the glass lies a debate as complex as nature itself. For some species, captivity offers protection from extinction, a controlled environment where food is guaranteed, predators are absent, and medical care is constant. Yet for others, confinement becomes a quiet erosion of instinct and identity. A lion pacing the same few meters, an orca circling a tank far smaller than the ocean it was born to roam, a bird deprived of the skies it evolved to master, each represents a story of welfare traded for education, entertainment, or conservation. Zoos argue that these encounters inspire empathy, funding, and scientific knowledge that could save future generations. Critics counter that no enclosure, no matter how well designed, can replicate the complexity, freedom, and choices of the wild. The truth sits somewhere in between. Some facilities advance welfare with spacious habitats and enrichment, while others struggle to meet even basic standards. Wildlife captivity forces us to ask a difficult question: when we claim to protect animals by enclosing them, whose needs are we truly meeting? Animal welfare is not a single global standard, it is a reflection of culture, shaped by history, tradition, belief, and necessity. What one society views as a cherished companion, another may see as livestock, and neither perspective is formed in isolation. In some cultures, cows are sacred symbols of life; in others, they are a source of food and survival. Some communities honor animals through rituals passed down for centuries, while others practice methods rooted in scarcity, climate, or deeply held customs. These differences don't simply divide people, they reveal how compassion is interpreted through the lens of identity and upbringing. But as the world becomes more connected, these perspectives collide, challenging long-held norms and sparking debates about cruelty, respect, and modern ethics. When videos of unfamiliar traditions go viral, outrage often spreads faster than understanding, ignoring the cultural context that shaped those practices. True progress in animal welfare requires more than judgment. It requires dialogue, empathy, and a willingness to see beyond our own experiences. In the end, compassion grows not by erasing cultures, but by inviting them into a conversation about how humans and animals can coexist with dignity. Modern civilization has advanced at a pace unimaginable to our ancestors, and animals have been woven into that progress in ways both visible and hidden. From the livestock that fed growing populations, to the lab animals that paved the way for vaccines, to the working animals that built cities and transported goods, their contributions are embedded in the foundation of human achievement. Yet with every step forward, a subtle moral debt accumulated. Industrial farming maximized efficiency but often pushed welfare to the margins. Medical breakthroughs saved millions of lives while relying on species that never had a choice. Even the comforts we enjoy today, clothing, cosmetics, entertainment, carry traces of animal involvement that many people never consider. The cost of progress isn't measured only in money or time. It's also etched into the lives of creatures who shared the journey without sharing the rewards. As technology accelerates and moral awareness expands, we are beginning to question whether the price they paid was fair, and whether future progress must still depend on their suffering. True advancement may not be found in what we gain from animals, but in discovering how to grow without harming them. So much of what we use every day carries an invisible story, a trail that winds through farms, factories, ships, and markets, linking ordinary products to the lives of animals we never see. Leather jackets, dairy ingredients in snacks, cosmetics tested decades ago, feathers in pillows, gelatin in candies, even entertainment industries built on tradition. Each item hides a complex chain of choices, trade-offs, and ethical blind spots. Most people never follow these trails because supply chains are designed to be efficient, not transparent. The further an animal product moves from its source, the easier it becomes to forget the living being behind it. Even well-meaning consumers can unknowingly support practices that conflict with their values simply because the connection is buried beneath layers of processing and marketing. But as awareness grows, more people are beginning to ask harder questions. Where did this come from? What conditions were the animals kept in? Is there a more humane alternative? In revealing these hidden supply chains, we uncover not only the reality of animal welfare in global commerce but also our own power and responsibility to shape what the system rewards and what it leaves behind. Across the world, people who work closest to animals carry perspectives shaped not by headlines or theories, but by experience. Veterinarians confront suffering directly, treating injured farm animals, neglected pets, and wildlife caught in human systems. Some speak of the emotional weight of their work, the quiet grief of seeing preventable pain, the hope that education can change habits, and the constant push for higher welfare standards. Farmers, meanwhile, often balance ethical intentions with economic pressure. Many care deeply for their animals yet struggle within systems built for efficiency rather than compassion, making their voices vital to any realistic discussion about reform. Activists stand on the opposite end of the spectrum, calling attention to cruelty that others overlook and pushing for systemic change, even when their methods spark debate. Scientists add another layer, bringing data that reveals what animals feel, fear, and need. These voices rarely agree on everything, but together they form the front line of the welfare conversation, a tapestry of passion, conflict, frustration, and hope. When we listen to all of them, we begin to understand that humane is not a static label, but a moving target shaped by those who refuse to stop caring. Pain is universal, yet invisible. For humans, we describe it with words. For animals, we rely on observation, physiology, and inference. Modern science has made remarkable strides in measuring suffering. Researchers monitor stress hormones like cortisol, track heart rate, study facial expressions, and analyze behavior to understand discomfort in ways that once seemed impossible. Even subtle changes, a shift in posture, a decrease in activity, or altered social interactions, can reveal profound distress. Neurological studies show that mammals, birds, and some fish possess nociceptors and brain pathways remarkably similar to humans, suggesting that pain is not a reflex but an experience. Yet challenges remain. How do we quantify subjective suffering across species with different anatomies, behaviors, and perceptions? Science offers tools, not answers. Data can illuminate pain, but it cannot fully capture fear, grief, or loneliness. Measuring suffering requires both precision and empathy, a careful balance between observation and interpretation. In this scene, we explore the emerging field of animal pain science and how it challenges long-held assumptions, forcing us to confront the realities behind welfare policies and ethical decisions. For centuries, humans assumed intelligence and emotion were uniquely our own. But research over the last few decades has sparked a cognitive revolution, revealing that many animals think, feel, and anticipate in ways once considered human-exclusive. Elephants exhibit grief, remembering and mourning their dead. Crows solve complex puzzles, plan for future needs, and even teach lessons to younger birds. Dolphins display self-awareness, cooperation, and problem-solving skills that challenge the boundaries of cognition. Even rodents demonstrate empathy, helping distressed companions without expectation of reward. These discoveries force a profound ethical reconsideration. If animals possess mental complexity, memory, and emotional depth, how can we justify systems that treat them as objects rather than beings? The cognitive revolution reframes welfare from basic survival to understanding what it means to thrive, to experience joy, fear, and curiosity. It challenges policy, industry, and individual behavior, compelling us to reconsider our moral responsibilities toward the creatures we share the planet with. In this scene, we explore the astonishing intelligence and emotional richness of animals, and the urgent questions this knowledge raises for modern welfare. As science illuminates the minds of animals, law begins to catch up. Across the globe, governments are recognizing that animals are more than property. They are sentient beings capable of feeling pain, fear, and joy. In the European Union, legal frameworks acknowledge sentience, influencing farming, transport, and research regulations. Countries like New Zealand and Switzerland have enshrined protections that reflect the intrinsic value of animal life, limiting confinement and regulating experimentation. These laws attempt to translate empathy into enforceable standards, balancing human needs with ethical obligation. Yet legal recognition is uneven, often inconsistent, and sometimes symbolic rather than practical. Sentience laws compel industries and individuals to reconsider treatment practices, but gaps remain. Billions of animals still live under conditions the law barely addresses. Nevertheless, acknowledging sentience in legislation marks a historic shift, the first formal step toward aligning moral understanding with societal action. In this scene, we examine how law reflects science and ethics, and how legal recognition of sentience could reshape the way humanity coexists with the animals in our care. Technology is transforming how we understand and protect animals. Artificial intelligence, combined with sensors and cameras, now allows farmers, scientists, and conservationists to monitor the well-being of livestock, laboratory animals, and wildlife in real time. AI systems can detect signs of stress, illness, or abnormal behavior faster than humans, flagging issues before they become critical. Cameras track movement patterns, vocalizations, and social interactions, generating data that guides interventions and improvements in living conditions. For example, algorithms can recognize when a chicken is isolated from its flock or a cow exhibits early signs of lameness, prompting immediate care. These tools bridge the gap between observation and action, turning welfare from reactive to proactive. Yet the technology also raises questions. Does monitoring equate to ethical treatment, or is it merely another form of control? AI can detect suffering, but it cannot feel it, and so humans must interpret, decide, and act. In this scene, we explore the growing role of artificial intelligence in welfare, highlighting both its promise to improve lives and the moral responsibility that remains squarely on human shoulders. When we think of animal welfare, land-dwelling creatures often come to mind first. Yet billions of aquatic animals live out their lives in environments where human impact is profound and largely unseen. Fish in industrial fishing operations endure crowding, low oxygen, and stressful capture methods. Octopuses, dolphins, and whales face confinement in aquariums, research facilities, or entertainment venues. Recent studies reveal that many fish exhibit pain responses, memory, and learning capabilities once thought impossible, challenging assumptions that they are insentient. Ocean welfare also intersects with global crises. Overfishing, pollution, and habitat destruction amplify stress and suffering for countless species. Unlike terrestrial animals, monitoring aquatic life is technologically demanding, and ethical standards are uneven across regions. Yet awareness is growing. Some fisheries adopt humane slaughter techniques, sanctuaries protect cetaceans, and aquaculture research increasingly focuses on reducing stress. This scene explores the hidden world beneath the waves, showing that welfare in the ocean is not just about survival, but about recognizing intelligence, emotion, and the right to a life free from unnecessary suffering. When discussing animal welfare, we rarely consider insects or small invertebrates, yet the question of their capacity to feel pain and distress is gaining scientific attention. Ants, bees, and spiders exhibit complex behaviors, learning from experience, avoiding harmful stimuli, and even showing signs of social cooperation. Research suggests that some insects may possess primitive forms of consciousness, capable of experiencing stress or suffering, though the extent remains debated. Beyond science, their welfare raises ethical questions: the millions killed for pest control, the use of bees in pollination systems, or even their roles in laboratory experiments. Small creatures are often overlooked because empathy tends to align with size, proximity, and perceived intelligence, a cognitive bias that leaves billions vulnerable. Yet, acknowledging their potential for sensation challenges our definitions of compassion, forcing us to expand our moral considerations beyond the familiar. Welfare, therefore, isn't only about mammals and birds. It's about recognizing the continuum of life and the responsibility humans bear toward all sentient beings, regardless of scale or visibility. Animals are capable of forging profound emotional bonds, not just with humans, but with each other and across species. Elephants have been observed mourning lost companions, touching bones and lingering near graves. Dogs rescue other animals in distress, forming deep attachments beyond food or reward. Whales and dolphins display social behaviors that suggest empathy, even protecting weaker members of their pods. Surprisingly, small creatures like rats show concern for cage mates, freeing trapped companions without any incentive. These examples reveal that care, compassion, and connection are not uniquely human traits. Such bonds challenge welfare practices that treat animals as isolated units, reminding us that social and emotional needs are integral to well-being. Recognizing these relationships pushes us to reconsider housing, enrichment, and interaction policies in farms, labs, zoos, and homes. Welfare, therefore, is not merely about survival or physical comfort. It encompasses the ability to love, grieve, and feel connection. In this scene, we witness how emotional bonds illuminate intelligence, empathy, and the often overlooked inner lives of animals. Across cultures and religions, animals have long inspired moral reflection and spiritual guidance. In Buddhism, compassion extends to all sentient beings, encouraging nonviolence and mindful care. Jainism takes this further, promoting strict vegetarianism and avoidance of harm even to insects. Christianity often emphasizes stewardship, framing humans as caretakers responsible for the creatures of the earth. Indigenous traditions view animals as kin, teachers, or spiritual guides, demanding respect and reciprocity. These diverse perspectives show that welfare is not merely a modern scientific concern but a timeless ethical challenge. Religion and morality shape behavior, influence laws, and inspire activism, bridging the gap between knowledge and conscience. Yet these teachings also reveal tensions. Reverence for one species may coexist with exploitation of another, or spiritual ideals may clash with survival needs. By examining how different belief systems approach animals, we gain insight into the moral frameworks that underpin welfare, revealing both the promise and the complexity of compassionate coexistence. Humans care deeply for the animals closest to them, the pets we see, touch, and love. Yet, for billions of others living out of sight, empathy often fades. Psychologists call this the psychology of distance. Physical, emotional, and social separation dulls our response to suffering. Factory farm chickens, pigs, or fish in industrial operations rarely inspire the same protective instincts as a family dog or cat. Media framing, marketing, and cultural norms amplify this distance, creating mental barriers between humans and the reality of animal lives. Cognitive dissonance also plays a role. We want to care, but confronting widespread suffering would demand uncomfortable changes in diet, lifestyle, and consumption. The result is empathy fatigue, moral compartmentalization, and selective compassion. Understanding this psychological distance is crucial for improving welfare. Education, storytelling, and exposure can bridge gaps, fostering awareness and prompting action. By recognizing our biases, we can begin to extend the same care we show to pets to the countless animals who rely on humans for protection, choice, and dignity. Images have the power to awaken empathy, spark outrage, and inspire change. A single photograph of neglected animals, viral videos of rescued wildlife, or documentaries exposing hidden suffering can reach millions, altering perceptions overnight. Visual storytelling bypasses rationalizations, appealing directly to emotion. In some cases, images have prompted legal reform, boycotts, and consumer shifts, proof that seeing is not just believing, but acting. Yet images can also manipulate, simplify, or misrepresent reality, creating partial truths that evoke reaction rather than understanding. Ethical storytelling requires context, care, and respect, highlighting the lived experiences of animals without exploiting their vulnerability. From social media clips to investigative journalism, the modern age has amplified the reach of imagery, making it a cornerstone of welfare advocacy. This scene explores how visual media shapes global awareness, revealing the profound impact of seeing suffering and compassion firsthand, and reminding us that images are more than documentation, they are catalysts for moral reflection and collective responsibility. Science is beginning to offer solutions that reduce or even eliminate the need for animal suffering. Lab-grown meat promises protein without slaughter, cultivating cells in controlled environments to produce meat that looks and tastes real. Advanced alternatives to animal testing use organ-on-chip technology, computer modeling, and synthetic tissues to study disease, toxins, and drug efficacy without harming living creatures. AI-powered welfare monitoring tracks stress and health in real time, guiding care with precision. Even conservation efforts benefit from innovation, using drones, sensors, and remote tracking to observe wildlife without intrusion. These breakthroughs demonstrate that progress doesn't have to come at the cost of life, blending human ingenuity with ethical responsibility. Yet technology is not a panacea. It requires investment, global cooperation, and a commitment to prioritize welfare over convenience or profit. In this scene, we explore these innovations, showing how creativity, ethics, and science can converge to redefine what it means to advance without causing harm, offering hope for a future where compassion and progress move hand in hand. Modern consumers are reshaping markets with their wallets, proving that ethics and commerce can intersect. Awareness of animal welfare has sparked demand for cruelty-free cosmetics, plant-based diets, free-range and organic products, and entertainment that respects sentient life. Labels like Certified Humane or Leaping Bunny allow shoppers to make informed choices, transforming personal values into tangible impact. Social media amplifies these shifts, connecting buyers with brands that align with compassion and exposing those that fall short. Companies, in turn, respond to market pressure, adopting welfare-conscious practices to maintain reputation and revenue. Yet the rise of ethical consumption also reveals inequalities. Access to these choices is often limited by geography, price, or awareness. True transformation requires not only willing consumers but systemic change that makes humane options widely available. This scene explores how conscious choices ripple through industries, highlighting the growing power of individuals to drive reform and demonstrating that consumer ethics are now a critical force in shaping the future of animal welfare. Compassion begins with understanding, and education is the bridge between awareness and action. Schools, community programs, and interactive exhibits teach children to recognize the needs, emotions, and rights of animals, cultivating empathy from an early age. Hands-on experiences, caring for classroom pets, observing wildlife, or participating in conservation projects, reinforce the interconnectedness of life and the consequences of human choices. Beyond children, public campaigns, workshops, and media literacy programs empower adults to make informed decisions, challenging cultural norms that may overlook suffering. Education doesn't merely impart facts, it shapes values, encouraging people to consider welfare in daily decisions, from diet and entertainment to policy and activism. By fostering empathy through knowledge, society can gradually close the gap between intent and action, creating a culture where concern for animals is embedded in thought, choice, and law. This scene highlights how teaching compassion transforms not only individuals but entire communities, laying the groundwork for a future where welfare is a shared responsibility. As our understanding of consciousness deepens, the boundaries of compassion expand. Welfare is no longer limited to familiar animals. It prompts reflection on all sentient life, including beings we may one day encounter beyond Earth, or artificial intelligences that can perceive, learn, and respond. Philosophers and ethicists ask, if a being can experience pleasure, pain, or curiosity, does it deserve moral consideration? Science fiction becomes a testing ground for these questions, imagining worlds where humans coexist with alien or synthetic life, highlighting the ethical dilemmas we may face. Recognizing consciousness beyond species challenges anthropocentrism, demanding humility, foresight, and moral imagination. It urges us to develop principles that honor sentience wherever it exists, ensuring that compassion is proactive, not reactive. This scene explores the philosophical frontier of welfare, asking us to extend empathy across boundaries, question our assumptions, and redefine what it means to live ethically in a world and universe shared with countless forms of life. Neglecting animal welfare carries consequences far beyond individual suffering. Ecosystems collapse when species are overexploited, leading to biodiversity loss that destabilizes food chains, agriculture, and climate balance. Pandemics can emerge from wildlife-human interactions, as pathogens jump species in environments shaped by human encroachment. Moral erosion occurs when societies normalize cruelty, weakening empathy and diminishing the capacity to care for vulnerable beings, human or non-human. Ignorance allows convenience to overshadow responsibility, turning millions of lives into invisible casualties. Yet awareness can prevent these outcomes. Informed policies, ethical practices, and compassionate choices help preserve ecological integrity, reduce disease risk, and reinforce social morality. In this scene, we examine the tangible and intangible costs of ignoring welfare, revealing that neglect is not benign, it endangers animals, humans, and the very systems that sustain life. Recognizing the cost of ignorance is the first step toward meaningful action, accountability, and a future where compassion guides decision-making. Traditional definitions of animal welfare often focused on physical health and survival, but a growing movement calls for a more holistic approach, one that embraces emotional, social, and cognitive well-being alongside physical care. Experts propose frameworks that assess not only freedom from hunger, pain, and discomfort, but also opportunities for enrichment, meaningful social interactions, and the expression of natural behaviors. This expanded definition acknowledges that welfare is subjective, dynamic, and deeply tied to the animal's own perspective. It challenges industries, policymakers, and caretakers to consider the full spectrum of needs, moving beyond minimal standards toward thriving environments. Recognizing animals as sentient, emotional, and social beings reshapes how we design farms, labs, sanctuaries, and even homes, placing moral responsibility at the center of daily practices. In this scene, we explore these emerging frameworks, illustrating that welfare is no longer a checkbox of basic needs, it is a commitment to understanding and supporting life in all its complexity. Animal welfare reflects more than the lives of non-human creatures, it holds up a mirror to humanity itself. How we treat animals reveals our values, empathy, and moral compass. Societies that prioritize compassion, even toward the smallest or most distant beings, often foster a culture of care, justice, and responsibility that extends beyond species. Conversely, neglect or cruelty can signal broader ethical blind spots, desensitizing humans to suffering and eroding collective conscience. By observing the ways in which animals are fed, housed, and protected, or ignored, we learn about ourselves, our capacity for kindness, our willingness to confront discomfort, and our vision of what it means to live ethically. The human mirror challenges us to recognize that welfare is not solely an animal issue, it is a reflection of the character, priorities, and identity of our species. In this scene, we explore how observing the treatment of animals invites introspection, encouraging a society that measures its humanity by the compassion it extends to the voiceless. Compassion is a choice, and it comes at a cost. Caring for animals asks us to see beyond convenience, to confront suffering we might prefer to ignore, and to take responsibility for lives intertwined with our own. Yet the price is worth paying. Every act of consideration, every effort to reduce harm, every step toward understanding the minds and hearts of other species, enriches humanity itself. The eyes of animals, whether wild, farmed, or domestic, reflect trust, curiosity, and the silent hope that we will act with empathy. In that reflection, we glimpse not just their world, but ours, the society we are building, the values we uphold, and the legacy we leave. As this journey through animal welfare concludes, the message is clear: compassion is not free, but it defines what it means to be human. Choosing care, responsibility, and empathy is a commitment to a better world for all beings, a future where welfare is not just policy or principle, but lived reality.